Hey, welcome to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast, where we have honest conversations about faith, neuroscience, and hope. I'm Michael Camber, a relationship and recovery coach.
And I'm Nick Buddha, a mental health and relationship coach. If you feel stuck in shame, addiction, or pain, you don't have to face it alone. Join us for some real stories, real tools, and a real path forward. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome back to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast. I'm Michael. This is my best friend, Nick.
Yes. Oh, I like that title better than counselor or coach or whatever else.
I'm going to put that on your new business cards.
Michael's best friend.
Michael's best friend.
Look, guys, very important thing that we want to start with, speaking of our friendship. I sent Michael a text message because I had found at the store, on sale, some Ninja Turtles socks.
Look at that.
For those of you who are listening, I am wearing a pair of black socks with all 4 Ninja Turtles on it, but you can only see what Michael and I would say are probably the best 2.
The 2 best Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, the ones that we'd actually like to hang out with.
Yeah. Michelangelo and Leonardo.
Yes, correct. And then I texted Michael. I said, hey, next time we record, you need to wear your Ninja Turtle socks.
This was over a week ago.
Oh,
you
yeah.
texted me this.
Did not reference it since. Didn't even give you context. Sure enough, Michael remembered, and he wore his too.
For further context, what I was sharing with Nick earlier is that the chance of me missing this was 0.
Wow.
Because at Christmas, all of my socks had holes in them, and I was like, I need socks for Christmas. And so I basically just told my kids and my wife, I was like, hey, I'll take socks for Christmas, but here's the caveat. They all have to be Ninja Turtle socks. I don't want to put any socks in my feet that don't have Ninja Turtles on them.
Like,
That's
this
the
has
world I live
opened
in
up
now.
a whole door for me. I don't know where the best places to get Ninja Turtle socks are. I'm guessing Amazon has a million.
Yeah, I think a lot came from Amazon. Every now and then you can get lucky if you walk into like a Ross or a TJ Maxx or something, though I don't know where those are coming from.
Do you remember those video game stores? I'm trying to think of a good example. They still have them at some bigger existing malls. Not like GameStop, but it's almost like video game influenced type stores. So they have a lot of like...
talking like FYE.
Somewhat like that. For those of you in Chicago who are listening, the Woodfield Mall in Schaumburg, Illinois, suburb of Chicago, has one of these that's just giant, but it's like video game cartoon influenced store. So it's got it's got clothing, but it's got a whole bunch of like mugs and wall apparel.
Which is almost what GameStop art is now. Yeah,
for real. Well, welcome back to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast. It's been a few weeks.
Get us back on track.
Since we've had an episode. And, man, we're so thankful if you got to listen to the last episode with our friend Lindsay talking about the fact that girls struggle to, had a lot of people engage with that episode. I think are encouraged by it. And if you haven't listened to it, go check it out. Before we dive into today's content, which I'm actually really excited about, and I'll give you a heads up. Here's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
For those of you who have struggled as a follower of Jesus or who have been just even loosely involved with a church, and you have taken the risk of sharing this issue in community or even with some leadership in the church, and you have been hurt by that, we're going to talk about that dynamic today. So buckle up.
Buckle up, buttercup.
We're going to be real and talk through it. But before we do that, some really good updates.
Yeah.
You start. You want to start with the book?
Oh, yeah, I guess I should start with the book.
Please.
Here's what happened, guys. This says not for real on the front. I'm holding up the Quit Porn Quick Start Guide, which I wrote, again, as a way to say, hey, I didn't know what I needed when I first started trying to quit porn. This is exactly what I needed. This is it. I added more content to it to make it more substantial and more helpful because I can't just leave stuff alone. So there's some other chapter stuff in the back of this. And I know we just talked about the importance of including women on in this conversation. When I wrote this the first time, this was written primarily to the clientele base that I have the most of, which is men. So there's stuff in the back of this, like there's now a note to wives and partners. So I tried to make that a little bit gender non-specific. But for the most part, like there's a frequently asked questions section about like what to do, how to do it, and where to go next. So, and there's an expanded section about the seeds, which is going to really help you dial in how to keep sustaining the sobriety that you've achieved. 2 things. One, again, this is still free. You can go to my website and download it right now, rscky.com/quickstart. You can text me, and I'll send you a physical copy for free. Or, starting next week, by the time this podcast sees the light of day, comes out of the coffin. I don't know why I said that. You can get it on Amazon. I'm going to put it on Kindle as cheap as I possibly can, or it'll be there if you want to order physical copies for yourself, or your church, or your group, or whatever you're doing. But again, if you text me or email me, I'll give one to you for free. But if you want to order it on Amazon, knock yourself out.
Listen, basically, New York Times bestseller. We're just putting it out there.
Yeah,
No
it will
cost
be.
to you.
Yeah, future New York Times
No,
bestseller.
in all seriousness, I love the Quick Start Guide just because thinking back 15 years ago when I really was hungry for help, that would have been the best digestible, most practical resource that was really difficult. It still is very difficult to find because it seems like most things are big, huge programs, big, huge books that I'm like, I can't handle all that.
Yeah.
But give me some starting points. Help me start running. And that's what that book does.
That's the most flattering compliment you've ever given me.
Listen, you didn't even ask me to write a blurb in it, so.
Oh, well, that's blurbless. My next one, you can do a blurb.
I got to have some more initials by my name before it even matters.
I don't. Everybody I talked about this is always like, drop the initials, drop the credentials. After
No one
name.
cares.
Yeah, nobody cares.
If you don't know anything, it doesn't
Nobody
matter.
cares that you're qualified. They just want to know what you have to say. I don't
Hey, I want to jump in. Michael has been doing an awesome job. If you haven't gone to our website lately, rscky.com, it's getting a major facelift.
Big time.
Still making some tweaks.
You can't see it yet, but I'm working on it.
But please stay tuned for just a really good upgrade there, and also more information of how you can get engaged with us, but also some more resources. So stay tuned to just our website.
Yeah, that's good. Other than that, I got sick and the allergies kicked in because the weather in Louisville, if you've been paying attention to the side of the country, has just been bonkers. I'm talking like 75-degree days with tornadoes, and then the next morning it's snowing, and it's just thrown everything for a loop.
Both of our families. Yeah.
I tried to record something last week, and I literally couldn't talk. So I was like, maybe I can clean it up. No, nobody wants that.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm trying to think of any other announcements. I think we're so far so good. Yeah.
How's
I feel like
Jax?
Jack's pretty ugly. Got a horrible haircut.
Oof.
My dog got shaved, and we're just going to have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for that thing to grow back.
It's a bummer.
Okay, let's dive in.
Let's jive it. Let's jive in.
Jive. Here's a good way to start this conversation is that this topic today is actually very close to home because it's part of my story. Actually, in two ways. One way is when I first became, well, I guess there's layers, but I would say there's more than two. Here's the 3 layers I can think of, and I'll stop there. Layer 1 is I began my struggle with pornography in a Christian home that regularly attended church. But to make a long story short, I did not feel safe or that it was okay to talk about this within that community.
Mm-hmm.
So that's layer 1. That didn't come as a result of specific experiences. It was just something I downloaded implicitly, kind of just in the background. Layer 2 is, as I began to grow in my faith, I felt a leading and a prompting to go into full-time ministry, which you and I share. And I began to struggle as a pastor. And that created its own challenging dynamics of how do I navigate this within that space. And then layer 3 was after stepping aside from ministry, largely because of the struggle and the impact it was making in my life and within my family. I was again sitting in the role of just being a member of the church and knowing I needed more help, but then even receiving maybe some well-intentioned efforts to care for Nick, but sometimes came across in really hurtful ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I share all that to say what we're talking about here, at least for myself, I want to own. I'm bringing my own story to the table. I'm trying to hold that into a little bit of distance so that I don't read into all guys based on my own story. But I also hope that when I speak, I'm speaking from, I don't want to use the term me too, but that I can relate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to own that. as we talk about this.
Same. I'll briefly share my
Please.
experience too, because I think that's important. Yeah, same. I grew up in a Christian home. I never felt safe talking about any of this at any point for a lot of reasons. I did. I'm trying to remember what the program was called when I got, I think, late high school, late middle school, early high school. It was called True Love Waits, the whole purity thing with the ring.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I read. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I read that. Yeah.
And so it talked about like all the problems, and it's like, it painted there's a very bleak picture that it painted. Sorry, plant. And there were a couple of instances, I think, where I got close to sort of confessing. They're trying to hash this out in a safe place at church. Never did it. One of the instances was when I had resigned from my position as youth pastor and I was about to leave. This was during a time when there was an interim pastor in because our lead pastor had left, I don't know, a couple months before that. And on my way out, this was a very gracious thing for him to do. I didn't ask for it, but he said, hey, on your way out, what's up? Tell me everything. Tell me the problems. Like, is there something that we need to address? Like, do we need to get you help on your way out? Like, is there some damage or some secret thing that played out here that needs attention so that I'm aware of it so that I can care for this church well and care for you well on your way out?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that's like next level. And, there wasn't anything other than my own crap that I wasn't sharing. But in that moment, I had this thought like, oh, he might be able to actually help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then that voice of shame showed up and I was like, nah. He can't. Just leave.
So let's pause here for a second for guys and girls who are, especially in light of last episode, I definitely want to include females in on this conversation.
Yeah.
For anyone who has struggled with a sexual compulsive thing in the church, why has it been hard to talk about it? I want to pause and just reflect on that for a moment. There's multiple dynamics going on that I want to, and let me start here with one thing that's just culturally been true is Michael and I have referenced this a lot, but what has happened macro level is when America has gone through this whole sexual revolution piece, the church has obviously responded to it and as it should, but I think some ways its approach to it is more a condemnation of sin, which is good and right. But what that has done is when that's personified, what is downloaded for the person who is struggling with that is then I'm a piece of crap. I'm not welcome. I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
So even as we kind of look at, 60s and 70s and even in the 80s where the sexual revolution was just really taking root into our culture, the church seemed to double down on its righteous posture, which is, hey, that's not right. This is not good. But at the same time, maybe lacked some pastoral presence towards the individuals that it was impacting.
Yeah.
And we say this because we love the church.
Right.
And this is not to talk down at the church at all. This is actually to say, hey, the church is made up of a bunch of people that desperately need Jesus.
Including the pastors.
Exactly. And so one thing that we're still learning to get right is how do we show up well for those that are impacted by this?
Yeah, one of the things I want to just briefly say that, we both work with pastors and people in ministry too, so they're not immune from this at all. Speaking of, for nothing else, just our own two stories. And what I want to say is pastors are people too. The things that affect pastors are no different than the things that affect people in their congregations. But there's two things I think were happening during this phase of church history. It wasn't that long ago. It feels weird to call it that. But either A, pastors were struggling too, and they didn't see a way out because they didn't know what to do about it. Or B, the pastor wasn't struggling in any capacity, and so there was just an avoidance of, well, that thing's bad. I'm not getting anywhere near it. And so there was just an ignorance of the problem, ignorance of the depth of the true problem.
I think, and honestly, statistics have shown the reality of this, that just like, that's such a good point. Pastors are people too that are just as influenced, can be just as tempted by sexual brokenness and the pornification of our culture. It ranges, but Pure Desire, again, based on their honest conversation with pastors in an anonymous way, it's like somewhere between 40 and 50% of pastors say, hey, either pornography is a struggle for me or it can be a draw, a temptation.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then I'm wondering, like, the other half of pastor, I was like, bro, you're not being honest.
Right. That's my assumption too.
Yeah. And go back to the episode we have with Kyle Edelman, a pastor of a very large church here in Louisville. that he's even saying in his pastoral ministry, he assumes that this is going to be something that is a pull, a temptation within his church family, and even for himself. One thing he didn't talk about that I really appreciate Kyle for is as he leads staff, he has talked about 10 questions that he is regularly accountable to as a pastor and as a man. And one of those top 10 that he constantly wants to be in conversation with is the way he worded it: have you been exposed to anything sexually explicit this week? And then how has it affected your thinking, your feeling, yeah. And I'm like, okay, there's some normalcy there. There's some honesty there. And we just want to affirm, we love that. But at the same time, I've wondered if some of the cold ways that some pastors or leaders have responded to it is because deep down they have their own shame and they know they struggle too. But it's easier to manage it and say, well, like, oh, stop, don't do that.
Yeah, because that's typically how it plays out in every other relational system outside the church. So why would the church be any different?
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing like when we've talked about in the past when it's like, if you're a kid and you're or a young adult and you go to try to have conversations like this, a very heavy topic with a parent, and the parent sort of shuts down and is like, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that that parent has their own story with regard to whatever the thing is we're trying to talk about. So if they've already got some sense of shame or guilt around it and haven't attended to it well, they're going to have a really hard time showing up and attending to you well in your stuff.
Yeah.
And again, what we're saying is that doesn't change just because you're in ministry. And we're saying that with a level of compassion going, we get it. We've been there. And we're trying to tell you that there's a path forward, because I think honestly what Jesus is inviting us to in this, like the beauty of the church, is that it's a safe place where you can show up and be honest.
Yeah.
And I know, like you said just a second ago, like that's a complicated thing to say because the church doesn't always get it right. People have been hurt in the church and by the church, and we're sensitive to that. We are. But that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah. And I think if you were to sum up this point in a nutshell, what we're saying is I think pastors, leaders, and even members of the church have often lacked the humility of approaching someone with any form of brokenness and saying, hey, I am a broken person too.
Yeah.
And you are not defined by your struggle. You are created in the image of God with eternal value and worth, and you're loved regardless of your behavior and performance. And so to press forward first from that posture instead of, oh, that's one of those like porn people, like, it almost becomes like an identity. So it's been a struggle for, I think, for some local churches. One other thing that I think of what has caused hurt within the church is the framework by which churches have approached this issue. And what I mean by that is seeing it primarily as a moral issue versus a holistic person issue.
Yeah.
Or actually what we would say is ultimately a relational issue.
Yep.
We've talked about this before in other episodes, but I think it's worth repeating. This struggle, and I think it's easy to see it in a reactive sense with, the culture's sleeping around, the culture is trying to normalize sex in whatever relationships, and that's just a moral issue. Those are just bad choices.
Yeah.
And then it's easy to then make the huge jump to say, someone's regularly looking at porn. Someone is struggling with being too sexual in kind of very frequent serial relationships. That's just a bad habit. It's a bad decision making.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is actually biblically, my framework that really popped off the page was from 1 Corinthians 6, where Paul's talking about in the church in Corinth, there's all these people, their temptation was they have become followers of Jesus, but at that time, there was a temple that worshiped a goddess, and they did it through prostitution. And it was very easy on the way home from work or just going through the city. I guess I'll just go and sleep with this prostitute. And for Paul, he didn't even touch on so much the spiritual aspect of it, which he could. Mm-hmm. What he actually honed in on is he said, this struggle is ultimately a sin against your own body.
Yeah.
And I love the beautiful passage. He said, the Lord is for the body, and the body is meant for the Lord. So that's opened a door for me to say, man, this sin, not only is it a moral, spiritual struggle, sure, but also it has to do with the management of our body and the natural sex drive that God's created and what that was created for. which is relational connection and union within marriage,
Yeah.
aka a piece of intimacy. So when that's distorted, misdirected, if we're not addressing what's going on in the body, if we're not addressing the internal narratives that it carries in those actions, and we're getting at mind, emotion piece, but ultimately, if we're not looking at the big picture of how this makes sense relationally for the person, then we're really doing a disservice.
Yeah, because the temptation is to handle it like we've typically handled stuff, which is if there's a problem going on in someone's life that we objectively label as sin, well, we have a history or a framework for how we deal with that, which is to repent, which is good, turn from it, and do something else. The struggle is that sometimes that's just not that easy.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that happens when we label something. When we label something, we tend to stop being curious about it because now we don't have to think about it. That happens with, all of life. I don't want to take a nosedive into politics here, but you think about like when we label something in a political nature, we tend to disregard that thing or that people because now we don't have to be curious about why you believe what you believe, who you are, why you are that way, why you support these things. If I just call you, that political party or whatever, then I can shut my brain off and not engage with you. Now you're just inhuman, right?
Yep.
So again, it's healthy and appropriate to label things as sin, but that doesn't mean that our curiosity has to shut down and stop. So it's like, yeah, we're calling this sin.
It's a good point.
And I still need to lean in and ask more questions and be curious about what I actually have going on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because Jesus did that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even thinking, I know I talk about the woman at the well story a lot, but Jesus didn't show up and stop at her sin and say, you're right in saying you're not married. You're not married to the guy you live with now because you've had 5 husbands. He didn't stop there. Like, he continued to press into her story.
Yeah.
And we have to model that.
Yeah.
As leaders, as Christians.
Oh, and I love that example specifically because speaking of getting at the heart of the matter, the relational reality for this woman was Jesus pitched it as the analogy of the well. Like, you're coming here to draw water, but your whole life is this pursuit of living water.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find it in these relationships, and it's right in front of you. And I love that. I think, I always forget who said it. But the quote, which basically says, the one who knocks at the brothel door is searching for God. And a brothel is a place for prostitution. That's my framework. It's like the person hasn't just developed a bad habit. They are searching for Jesus.
Yeah, big time.
They are searching to be loved and be known and be received. And porn is this broken way that they've settled into to try to capture that. And goodness, that's every single one of us. We're propping up Jesus replacements all the time. And I think, dude, your point on curiosity, and I would add compassion. Might as well talk about the 8 C's.
Do it.
No, those 2 things specifically, when we lose that in the church for any issue, the curiosity and compassion for another individual, I think we have become so self-righteous to say, oh, well, I don't deal with that. It's not that I don't struggle with replacing Jesus with, fill in the blank. Man, that's what makes all of us beggars looking for bread. And just because your begging has looked different doesn't mean that you're above what the other person is struggling with.
Right. I don't remember who said this first or even how they worded it, but this is how I'm coming up with it in a moment. We tend to project what we reject in ourselves. So if I'm dealing with a thing that I'm having a hard time dealing with that I hate about myself and I don't want to look at it or pay attention to it or be curious and compassionate about it, I'm going to have a really hard time staying present with other people who are dealing with that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to withdraw or pull back or withhold my presence from the conversation or the relationship because of that. And the goal there is to not isolate yourself. It's to lean in harder, because the beauty of what I think God does through relationships is to, purify us is what comes to mind. But that's all over Scripture. Like the Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, so friend sharpens friend. I think that's the framework. Relationships aren't easy, and they're meant to further the process of sanctification.
Yeah.
If I live by myself the rest of my life, I don't meet any friction.
Yeah.
So the fact that I'm in relationship with people, either my spouse or the church or you, frankly, that might create friction because of what I believe about myself, what I think about you, how I'm operating in relationship. that friction creates the opportunity for growth. It's not easy, but it's necessary for you to become who God is calling you and creating you to be. And that takes place primarily in the church, in our relationships.
This passage has come up multiple times. Actually, it's come up because of just had a really long conversation with a friend who is experiencing this very dynamic, been hurt by the way the church has responded to his struggle, where he's at. This passage came up precisely because of what Michael just said. So this is 1 John chapter 1, verse 5. And it says this is the message we have heard from him, Jesus, and declare to you. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. If we stop there, then yes, logically that we need to denounce all darkness. We need to separate from it. We need to call it out and hate it. But that's not where that passage stops. Goes on to verse 6 and says, if we claim, all of us, if we claim to have fellowship with him and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not live out of the truth, AKA we all have stuff that we're dealing with darkness, which is why he goes on and says, confess your sins because he's faithful and just. But then this is the beautiful part. But verse 7, but if we walk in the light as he, Jesus, is in the light, we have fellowship, relationship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, purifies us from all sin.
Yeah.
So if that didn't click right away, I think that's a reminder. I'm going to keep this handy in case we need to go back. It's not just this moral agreement that says, oh, I know it's wrong. I need to stop. And therefore, that's what's going to purify me and release the power of sin in my life.
Yeah.
Walking in the light means walking in relationship.
That's right.
And it's a process, not a destination.
Right. I'll push that one step further.
Please.
Confessing your sin to strangers also is basically pointless.
Tell me more about that.
You might have courage to walk up to somebody. Well, let me back up for a second. It might feel easier to call Nick or I and say, hey, like, help me with the porn thing. I'm struggling. Out of the gate, because we're not invested in your life. I don't know you really. I'll get to know you. But, like, I don't go to church with you. I'm not a part of your family. And so there's, a less weightiness to it because, frankly, there's nothing at stake. You can, Nick or I could, this is not going to happen, but, like, dislike you, and you could dislike us, and nothing about your life has to change or is affected. And one of the things we'll talk through, especially if you read the book, like there's a part in there about community, building community around you. So while Nick and I are really great, faithful guides for you in this journey, we are not meant to bear the weight of your recovery journey. We're a part of it. We're a coach. We're a tool. We're a part of the process. But this isn't all of it. And that takes place primarily, like Nick, like we've been, kicking a dead horse here, happens in a relationship. So this is a good starting point, but if you're unable or unwilling to play this out in relationship in some capacity, even if you look at your landscape of relationships that you have right now between family, friends, church, coworkers, whatever, and you go, there's nobody, I don't have a safe person, I get it, but also the work now is finding that safe person.
So this is a perfect segue into the second half of this conversation, which is, okay, I've acknowledged that I've been hurt by the church.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, maybe significantly so. Like really hurt, really shamed, really rejected. So what do I do now? And it may be off-putting to be like, okay, but you're telling me to go back to the church? And the answer is yes. However, or and.
Caveat.
And, well, before I say the and, I want to emphasize the reason why we believe in the church is not because it's supposed to be the silver bullet that always gets everything right. The reason we believe in the church is because we love God, and it's God's plan A for community.
Yeah, we believe in the church because God believes in the church.
That's correct. That's a way better way of saying it. So our faith in the church is rooted in our faith in God Himself, and actually more specifically the work of the Holy Spirit and making his church more purified over time, and it's called sanctifying, growing it, making it more like himself, which again is a process. So what's my and for rethinking God's plan A? It would be to be discerning about what community within the church looks like, right? So for some guys too, what we encourage them, even when we work with them in coaching, is to identify specific individuals, not even necessarily programs or a small group or a study or a service where go throw yourself in among people among the church. That's not what we do. We choose them to be specific and say, who specifically is a safe person that embodies the person of Jesus, who, let's just use that word, who is safe and trustworthy to lean on and fully be honest and transparent with. That would be the starting place that we would say.
Yeah.
And then to grow in, I guess, developing a sense of trust in those spaces, and then as God would move you into, because again, we would even say the church isn't ultimately attending a worship service. The church isn't ultimately having your name on a membership roster. Sometimes I'm actually even thinking of another individual who, man, feels really pretty disenfranchised with the church, and because of that, it's been an excuse to just be super distant. Like, maybe I'll just watch a sermon online. Maybe I'll, attend a thing every once in a while. But that's equally horrible.
Yeah.
In the sense of, like, I think the enemy has you right where he wants you to say, you can be connected to the church in a very individualistic, self-serving way. But what I am saying there's space for is a progression towards getting plugged in. That's such a church term. Getting connected.
Yeah.
And if that starts with a regular relationship with maybe one follower of Jesus or a few followers of Jesus, and that's the regular way that you're connected to, again, big C church, the body of Jesus, then that's a great place to start.
Yeah. And I would say you have some intuition on this. It's very rare. Be careful how I say this. Most people, when I press them and say, who do you have in your life right now that is this person? If they stay with it for a couple minutes, they always come up with a name.
Yeah.
It may not be perfect. There might be some problems with this person. Maybe they're in, and I get like there are some people I'm working with I know who are like in the middle of transitioning from a community to another. So like there's always nuance of this situation, but a lot of people, if you sit with it in your gut for a moment, you can usually come up with somebody in your life because most people aren't that isolated and they're not just totally surrounded by goobers.
Yeah.
Like you can, if you sit with it long enough, you can come up with somebody. And most of the time, everybody knows. People already know, and they go, oh yeah, it's this person. I know that they would love me through this, and I know that they would be present with me in my pain and not try to fix me or shame me and guilt me. And then it comes down to the question, why haven't you called him?
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to bother him. Well, I'm afraid you're going to bother him too. And that's the point.
Yeah.
That's like, that's how relationships works. Like we are perpetually bothering each other.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Well, let me double down in that and what I was just mentioning too. The biggest trap I see guys getting stuck in is I was hurt by this institution, this thing called the local church.
Yeah.
And therefore, because I've been hurt by that, and it's significant, it's real, their hurt's real, and needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to give up on church. And so I think the illogical point, we were even talking about this before we started recording, which was like you mentioned, if I'm in a car accident, sometimes the trauma of that's so significant. It's like I can't be in a car for a while. But it would be foolish to say, well, I'm going to give up on any form of transportation. Like even a really good therapist would be like, hey, let's work you towards, to live that way is a very reactive, crippling way to respond to your story.
Yeah.
Even more so, if God's plan A is, hey, you've been hurt by something that I'm working in and that have designed for good and for is plan A, to give up on it altogether really reminds me how the enemy works. And I would say even, man, as a married guy, who have 3 incredible guy friends, which Michael is one of. Maybe he's the top spot. I know. I know.
Jack, Tyler, cover yours on that one.
Hey. If you've ever done a long-term, deep relationship with anybody, you know hurt is involved. Okay? And I feel like I don't need to over talk about this, but it seems like we're surprised by that within the church.
Yeah.
And again, please hear me, guys. I'm not trying to demean your pain or the way or the even sinful ways that you have maybe possibly been treated. But what I am saying is to expect that there's never going to be miscommunication, that there's never going to be a dynamic where you downloaded something that was hurtful, or that somebody else in that relationship has acted in a sinful way. To expect that or have that expectation in the church is just, it's not real. It's
right.
not a thing. And so I'm trying to say that with compassion. And let me say one more thing, because I want you to speak on this too. What I have learned, I'll speak for myself. In some of the hurt that I have absorbed in my experiences with church, some of it was I put something on the other person that wasn't fair for them to own. And what I'm getting at is some of the hurt was a manifestation of my own healthy shame, that I am struggling through something that is, as scripture says, is darkness, it's broken, it's heavy, it's destructive. And so when somebody even lovingly pressed in towards me to call it out, it felt not good.
Yeah.
It kind of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for me to say, oh, that sucks, they were wrong because they hurt me.
Yeah.
But really part of that dynamic, hear me out, was my own shame was coming to the table. And my shame colored that situation and said, oh, well, then that person's wrong. What would you say about that? Or how would you speak into that?
How would I say that? Your church needs you to, how would I carefully and gently say this? Your church needs you to struggle not privately. The church, we'll say this, the church needs your pain. So if you are hurt by the church or hurt by people in the church and your response is to shut down and isolate or remove yourself from it, like what we're doing is we're relieving a symptom. We're not dealing with the problem. So what I think, and again, I think this is one of the points of the church, which is good for this, is that when you are in pain, when you have been hurt, that you don't just sort of quietly fade into the background, that you go through the right people, the right channels, and express that pain and express that hurt. Because if we are hurt and we do not share our hurt communally, the people who cause the hurt probably don't really fully grasp how much they have hurt you. And if they don't fully grasp it or understand it, then they're probably not ever going to change their behavior.
Yeah.
Frankly, was that a good way to say it?
Yeah. And I would even add, like, that's really good, Michael. Not add. I would elaborate and say, for the guy or the girl who's taking that risk and choosing to re-enter into church community and get plugged in and to be known and to be honest, like, just be careful that as you're experiencing good biblical love, it may hurt, it may feel unpleasant, it may be uncomfortable, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
I think part of our own struggle with sin is we want our sanctification to all be like easy and comfortable and so like lifting me up all the time. But the reality is if there's cancer going on inside of me, the treatment of it's going to hurt sometimes. We've talked about that picture with like Aslan and Eustace, right? Ripping the scales off of him, but how the process was unpleasant, but at the same time, he believed in the goodness of the lion and how beautiful it was when the result was done. So I guess I'm challenging the one who's quick to say, I don't want to be hurt anymore. And if anything seems hard, it's their fault. They're doing something wrong. Man, it takes some discernment to say, like, real good biblical love is not always going to be cupcakes, butterflies, and rainbows.
It's messy.
Here's a good thing. Each of you being one, and then Tyler and Jack in my life, have modeled the proverb, which I cannot remember the exact reference, but it says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend."
Yeah.
And so, there are, outside of Allie, there are no three guys or people on planet Earth that I trust more. But I also want listeners and viewers to say, like, each of you have chosen to step towards me in ways that was like, ooh, that's really hard. It could have been a question. It could have been, "Hey, Nick, like, here's an observation." And it didn't feel great. It felt like I was being wounded. But at the same time, I knew, because of y'all's posture, your demeanor, and your faithful presence with me in the midst of it, that the goal was not to be wounded. It was actually a pursuit of Nick's heart. And goodness, even as a parent, I know the same thing. I have to make decisions all the time that my kids are like, "Oh, this dad." Like, that's part of loving them well.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you can receive that, right, to know that if your expectation is, well, I only expect to be like hugged and just built up with every word that comes from community within the church, beware.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a lie. I'm touching it again.
Stop touching it.
I think we need, by the way, this is an ongoing thing in the background. We're going to be transparent here. I have a tendency to grab this mic stand and adjust it as I shift. And it makes all sorts of noises. I'm sure you can hear it. Michael has reprimanded me for this. But
I wounded him over it.
what I would like is like one of those shot collars.
Well, I thought I could put these on like a handle. Would you rather just hold a microphone?
Let's do the ones that just suspend down from the ceiling and then.
A boom mic? Is that what they're called? Boom arm mics?
Britney Spears style, just like right here. I think
Garth
that lapel
Brooks style.
Yes.
I also want to be careful to say this too, because I know we're talking around a whole lot of stuff, and if people have been hurt in the church, that's really complicated. We're not trying to simplify it or make it too simplistic. I'm not advocating for abuse. If there has been significant abuse to you by the church or by people in the church, that's a big deal. I'm not advocating that you walk back into an abusive situation. Maybe you need to transition to another church home, or you need to get good clinical help from a licensed therapist or something like that. Yes. What we're saying is, and not like in those big time traumatic abusive scenarios, like just the normal complexities of like being involved in a church, is that sometimes you're miscommunication, you're misheard, you're hurt because you were overlooked. There's 100 different scenarios. But what we're advocating for is God's intentional design, but behind your healing and your thriving as a human is relationships in some capacity. Does that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely.
Is that a good way to say that?
Yeah. And I think you're so right to say it's so hard to speak to every nuance in every conversation.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if I was a listener or viewer and I'd ask the question, well, how do I know? Like if I'm being pursued in community and it hurts, like it feels uncomfortable, man, a really good simplistic test. So 1 Corinthians 13, we so often familiarize that passage with romantic love. It's the love is patient, love is kind passage. But actually that passage was written primarily about the posture of love that we have towards one another in the church. And so a good filter maybe to, if someone a pastor, a leader has pressed towards you and it hasn't felt great, is maybe to run it through the filter of that passage. Like hard words can still be kind, right? They're just hard to hear. And if it's really loving, not only are they ultimately kind, they're truthful, right? So just read through the passage. I'm just highlighting a couple. Paul says that real love delights in the truth. And also, the phrase is it bears all things and believes all things. For me, that translates in relationship with, hey, I'm not just going to share this with you. I'm also committing to be with you, to walk with this with you, to stick with you. It's hard. And to reinforce that you are not this struggle,
Yeah.
that I love you in your heart. And that's why I'm speaking truth, because I love your heart and I want to press into it. So if that's a helpful text, 1 Corinthians 13, thinking through, our friend Jack, been mentioned multiple times. He says one of the things that just simplistically, one of the best ways to have hard conversations is be clear and be kind.
Yep.
And so, sure, I think pastors can learn from that mantra too, but also from the one receiving it, just keep that in check. Just kind of maybe run it through that filter.
I think Brene Brown says that. Clear is kind. But I mean, Jack is on the level with Brene Brown. Maybe higher.
Basically taught.
Yeah. Let's just over exaggerate everything as we end the episode.
Which we need to do.
Yeah.
Wrapping this up. We've talked a lot about of big picture. We've talked a lot about some just general high level points to this conversation. I think, as we always would like to do, if maybe the only safe step that you feel like taking right now is reaching out to Michael or I through our website or through social media, please feel free to do it. We keep those conversations confidential, and we always offer ourselves to connecting, not as a paid service, but as a fact that this is just something we feel passionate about, and our highest commitment is not to make money. It is to help people on this journey. So please feel free to reach out. Yeah. And we'll help you from there.
Yeah. We're not too important to answer a text or a DM on Instagram. So hit us up through the website, whatever feels easy and comfortable and right for you. And we're there at Mike Camber with a K, at Nick W. Buddha on Instagram. Website is rscky.com. If you are looking for online community or community in person, we're about to spin that up here in the next couple of months. Recovery communities, rscky.com/community. That's for the online one if you're curious about what in-person community looks like here in good old Louisville, Kentucky. Again, send us a message. We'll talk and let you know what's coming up. Yeah. Anything else?
No, stay tuned. We got some good episodes coming up, including a conversation with a licensed sexologist.
A sexologist.
Pooh, it's a mouthful.
Yes. That sounds really important.
Pretty epic.
You should probably come back and listen to that one.
Yes.
We're filming it next week, so it doesn't exist yet, but it's coming.
It's coming.
All right. Well, like we always say,
Shabbat Shalom.
Close.
Well, it will be tonight at sundown. Shabbat Shalom is like Happy Sabbath. Right. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Let's rewind the tape a little bit.
No. Please continue rambling. This is my favorite.
Don't do this alone. That's what we wanted to say.
That's what I wanted to say.
Yes, for real. And Michael and I would be the first to say, God's grace in our life has been when we've stepped towards that, not doing it alone.
Yep.
So, thanks for viewing. We appreciate you all just for your listening and watching and comments, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If you found this helpful, do us a huge favor and subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Or, better yet, send this to someone who needs encouragement.
For more tools, resources, and information about our coaching, check out rscky.com. Keep showing up.
Yeah, we'll catch you next time.